Welcome to Public Safety Talk Radio, the podcast for all of our heroes in public safety, including law enforcement professionals, firefighters, EMTs, corrections officers, healthcare workers, and more. This show is produced by the POCUA and is founded upon its Soundness initiative. This episode is also sponsored by the POCUA, a consortium of financial institutions serving law enforcement, as well as other first responders and public safety professionals. Always remember, if you aren't banking with a POCUA credit union, you're just working with an institution that just so happens to serve public safety professionals, and you deserve better. Hi, I'm Ken Bader, your host for Public Safety Talk Radio. Really happy to be here today because I am going to right a wrong. We are going into episode 14, and the one pillar of our Soundness initiative we have not covered enough, in my mind, is the physical pillar, the health and fitness. And I have one of the best health and fitness experts that I've ever met. Had the pleasure of having him on Cool Culture Corner, one of my other podcasts, and he was really insightful. So I know he's going to be insightful today. His name is Nate Palmer. Nate, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Ken. I'm glad to be here. Super pumped that we get to go live and talk about something that I'm super passionate about.
Awesome. And I'm glad you're pumped too. Did you pump iron this morning, or did you run? What'd you do?
Well, I don't know if you saw, but I was just doing like 150 push-ups on the ground, just getting ready for this.
All right. I did 150 push-ups in my mind. Does that count?
That counts. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
And we'll go into that too. Yeah.
Thanks, man. You're very kind, to this old overweight man. But I want to get into, because when we talked on Cool Culture Corner, one of the most poignant things that you mentioned was that your health and fitness regimen really, really needs to kind of match your career and your job. And we're going to talk about that from a few different perspectives. But before I even get into that, tell our audience, your journey to be a health and fitness expert. How did you get to this space? How did you become, not only physically fit, but be able to really help others in that area?
Yeah, thanks for asking that.
Sure.
So my journey really started off, if I'm looking back like all the way, and you said we have like 4 or 5 hours to talk about this, so I'm just going to go deep on it.
Sure. Yeah, we're going to have 18 episodes, all broken up. And, we're just going to call it the Nate and Ken show.
Hey, I'm in. Let's do it. But when I was 13, someone broke into my house while I was the only one home alone there. So I remember like hiding under the bed with a steak knife as some random stranger was pounding on the bedroom door of my childhood bedroom. And I just remember feeling so powerless and so weak at that moment. So I think that was really like kind of the spur. And I don't know how many people can resonate with that, just the feeling of trying to regain power, regain control in your life. And that's how physical fitness started off for me. It really was this like search for like, hey, no one can hurt me if my meat suit is big enough. It's kind of how I thought about it. Right?
Right.
So, but then what happened was this transformation of going to the gym and working out and thinking about nutrition and all these things over years and years and years and years and years, built something that was even more valuable to me than a sweet set of muscles. But it was this idea that I can do anything that I want to do. I can put my mind to something and see results. I can grind it out on things that aren't necessarily pleasant and do things that in the moment don't feel good for a later gain. And I think that's really been the biggest thing that's impacted my life, my career, just my outlook on everything at the moment, is the idea that I know in my head that I can achieve what I want to because I have all those like single sessions, those single exercises, those single workouts that I've kind of built that like self-esteem bank. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So that's what I'm really passionate about now, is giving back to entrepreneurs and people who are working really hard in their profession, very passionate about what they do, helping them use physical fitness and nutrition as a force multiplier for their own goals and desires. Because at the end of the day, fitness is awesome, but unless you're doing something with it, it's slightly meaningless, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I learned something new about you. I didn't know you had that unfortunate experience at 13. It reminds me, one of my other gigs is I write for Podcast Magazine for the true crime category. And I remember, I believe the podcast is 911 calls with the operator. I could have that wrong, but they told a story about an MMA fighter where somebody broke into his house, and I believe he had a wife and 2 kids. And so he didn't have a weapon, but as an MMA guy, he says, all right, I'm going to take this guy on. And if I remember the story correctly, he won, but just barely. This guy that broke in must have been on something or whatever. But, he had mentioned even with all of his training, he had one hell of a fight on his hands.
Yeah. And you never know, right? But
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
thankfully he just stole some stuff. I think he stole a VCR. I'm dating myself now. So some jewelry, but everyone is unscathed. It's just one of those things that definitely lurks and lingers in the back of my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. All right. So sorry for going down that rabbit hole. I just thought that was really, really interesting. And thank you for sharing that. So again, the last time that I met you and we talked a couple of times, I was really intrigued with your approach to matching your health and fitness regimen, both your diet and your actual exercise to the career that you have. And although I know you work with a number of individuals, you've worked with a few first responders. So obviously, a health and fitness regimen for, say, a detective that has a desk job is going to be a lot different than, say, out here, Cal Fire. Those professionals that, all of a sudden at a moment's notice are working days and days on a forest fire. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So one thing that I always try to keep in mind is it's called the SED principle, SAID, which stands for specific adaptations to imposed demands. So that means that if you're trying to be Michael Phelps and win an Olympic medal for swimming, you shouldn't probably be spending a lot of time on the bike, right? If you're out fighting fires, you need to be adapting your training and your nutrition to be able to augment that and put yourself in the best position to get through an experience like that. Support the people around you, support the firefighters around you, and put yourself in a position to win. If you're sitting at a desk all day, either as a tech employee or as an entrepreneur or as a detective, then you probably don't need quite as intensive as a physical regimen, nor do you need to eat quite the same way as someone who's out on their feet, like an ER nurse or fighting fires all day, like some of these hot shots that we see right now, who are fighting all the fires that are burning on the West Coast.
Right. Well, let's take some examples. Let's start just because unfortunately it's top of mind that we both live in California and there has been a number of fires. And I will say, here on Public Safety Talk Radio, which is owned by the POCUA, while we do have a special place in our heart for law enforcement, since that was our start, we love all first responders. And although we do like to joke sometimes that firefighters only work 1 out of every 3 days, it is just a friendly joke, coupled with the fact that I know that once they have to get into action, whether it's a forest fire, or say a 3-alarm fire in a building, they are busting their ass possibly more than any profession ever. So let's take a few different professions. Let's say you are a firefighter that may have to go hours, maybe even days, real heavy physical labor under real hot and rough conditions. How might your health and fitness regimen look to prepare for something like that?
Well, I think about 2 different things here. Number one, you have kind of that sprint, let's go fast, let's lift something heavy, let's get out of harm's way that we need to train for. And then number 2, we have the grind, the slog, the endless walking, the digging, the preparing your body and mind to be ready to work for an 18-hour, 20-hour day. So on one hand, you need to be focused really heavily on the pretty grueling, we call them rucks or marches, where you put a weight vest on, put a backpack on, something heavy, and you just go grind it out, just go walk. And that's that could be an hour, 2 hours, even 3 hours if you're really trying to prepare yourself well for the grueling nature of a wildland fire, forest fire, something like that. On the other hand, we still need to make sure that we're prioritizing top end strength and speed. So what we're talking about there is working on our big compound movements in the gym. You're talking about deadlifts, squats, pull-ups, things like that, where you're actually lifting up something for 3 to 5 reps and really working on making sure that your strength and your ability to carry something, pick something up, and move it around is top notch, because that's a big part of the job as well. For me though, so like those are a couple of different ideas about that. But one exercise that really stands out to me for firefighting is the idea, it's called a farmer's walk or a farmer's carry. And this can be done with a variety of implements. So they make specific handles that allow you to basically put heavy weights in one hand and then the other and pick it up and just move it around. But also you can do this with a dumbbell, you can do this with a kettlebell, you could even do it with like a sandbag, grabbing it here, putting something on your shoulder. But the idea is carry something that's like your body weight or half your body weight in each hand and just carry it for like 100 yards, set it down, rest, and carry it back. Because that's some of the most functional full body strength that you can possibly develop that's going to serve you in a variety of situations. And it's one of my favorite things for what I call bulletproofing your body, because you're talking like top to bottom, full body muscle recruitment, because you have to stabilize, you have to hold yourself strong, you have to make sure that you're fighting against gravity and against the weights. And you get your grip strength in there, your trap and your neck strength in there, you get the ability to carry something without shifting your hips or hurting your low back. So a farmer's walk for a firefighter is one of my top exercises. In addition to, they call it the fireman carry, right? Something over the shoulder. And the one thing I like for that is a sandbag that you can weight up to like 100, 200 pounds. I think that's a key implement.
And what about diet? Because that's interesting. And one of the reasons, other than the unfortunate forest fires, that firefighting was on the top of mind for a very, very brief time. And I do want to stress, very brief time, less than a year, in my early 20s, I trained to be a firefighter. And it was an interesting dynamic in that, in doing some of these physical tests that I had to do, the individuals that were really, really muscle bound would do great at these weightlifting feats that they had you do, but did very poorly on the running and the agility and so forth. And then these other guys who were like super fast and able to, get through these little crevices and so forth, then they had to go to the weight portion, and they literally, some of them couldn't lift their own body weight once on a bench press. And so they needed somebody that had some physical strength, but also had some agility. So where does diet kind of play into that a little bit?
Well, with the kind of training that you're going to be doing as a firefighter, especially if you're going to be training for like a hotshot crew or like a wildland forest fighting crew, your training is grueling. It's long. You're strength training first, then you're doing your cardio, your rucks at the end. And so those are going to be very, very taxing sessions. So for most firefighters who are these young people who are training hard and preparing their bodies and minds for these grueling expeditions, diet is not necessarily something that I harp on for them, because they need to be eating a ton of food, so many carbs to replenish their body and be ready there. Additionally, like if you eat a little bit more, you're going to gain a little more muscle. The more muscle you have, the more it's going to protect your joints and stuff from like just day-to-day potential injuries. So the only thing that I would tell them, these guys, is we need to be getting some greens in there. So, and then we're avoiding processed foods. So eating a ton of food doesn't mean crushing pizza, but having,
I was just going to say, I love pizza. Tell me I can eat pizza if I do that job.
I mean, for sure you can, but that's not the post-workout snack every single day, right? We're still trying to stay with a whole food diet. The closer it gets to coming from like an actual natural food source where you're like, I could tell that this was alive at some point. So we're talking about, fruits, vegetables, potatoes, oats, rice, like grains are fine. Meats are fine. Making sure that you're prioritizing green vegetables just for the anti-inflammation and the vitamins and minerals that come into it. The word that really comes to mind when we're talking about people who are in professions where they're working their asses off is nutritious. And we don't say that word very much right now. We talk about clean eating or, clean versus dirty, whatever. Right. We need to be focusing on high nutrient dense foods. So if you're looking at something and you're like, nutrient dense foods are funny because it's like, if I spread out a big table of food, Ken, I'd be like, pick the nutrient dense foods. And I had like pizza and chicken wings and then like broccoli and like a steak. People are going to pretty much be able to identify like, okay, broccoli's good. The steak is good. Oatmeal's good. We know intuitively what that is.
Sure.
Marketing throws us off a little bit, but most of us get it.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I had a filet mignon last night. Now I don't feel so bad about
Nah,
my
man.
about my choice.
Steak is awesome. Red meat's awesome, especially if you can get that grass-fed stuff because
Yeah,
you're gonna have like the vitamins and minerals in a steak. It takes so many cups of broccoli to equal the vitamins and minerals you get from a steak, and no one talks about this.
sure.
To veer a little bit off topic here, one other way to eat meat in a way that's sustainable and also gives you massive amounts of vitamins and minerals is organ meat. Liver, kidney, tripe, all of those are packed with a ton of vitamins and minerals. In fact, so much so that Inuits or like indigenous people up in like Alaska, the northern regions, will
Sure.
oftentimes feed the meat to the dogs and then themselves eat the organ meat because it's very difficult to harvest fresh fruits and veggies up there.
Interesting. Interesting. So when my mom forced me to eat my liver, she was doing something good for me.
Doing you a big favor. That's right.
Cool. Now a word from our sponsor, the Police Officers Credit Union Association. The POCUA can suggest a credit union that serves public safety professionals in practically every state in the country. One state we definitely have covered is California. The police credit union serves all law enforcement personnel and their civilian coworkers, including volunteers within California employed by any municipal, county, state, or federal agency or special district. They also serve firefighters, EMTs, and court employees in 9 counties within the state. The Police Credit Union has proudly been serving first responders since 1953. For more information about the Police Credit Union, go to thepolicecu.org or call 800-222-1391. To find an institution to serve you in any of the other 49 states, go to policecreditunions.com. And always remember, if you aren't banking with a POCUA credit union, you're just working with an institution that just so happens to serve public safety professionals. And you deserve better. Well, let's shift to an ER nurse because right now, especially with COVID, these folks, and not just nurses, everybody that would work in an ER and in a hospital like that are spent. They're working 12-hour shifts. They're on their feet. They don't necessarily, in my mind, never having done the job, so I may be naive here, but what I can imagine is they're not lifting a whole heck of a lot, but they're always going. And they're really stressed. They're always on their feet. They really don't have much of a break. So how do you plan your health and fitness regimen to do that job at the optimum level?
This is a great question. And a lot of the nurses that I talk to, they actually struggle with this because their jobs are so demanding where you'll work like 3 12s in a row, where the thing you want to do when you get off of work is not go do an hour-long workout, right? It's
Sleep.
like that falls to the yeah, like it's like let's get home, rest, and recover because like tomorrow's another one. So it all like so a big part of this is planning your weeks out and making sure that you have enough recovery time or are able to get in even just small little workouts here and there. And if we're optimizing and if like let's say okay, nothing else on your to-do list, all you have to do is these 3 12s in a week. No kids, no family, no other responsibilities. You can do whatever you want to. What I would do is I would have these nurses working on a ton of core stability and strength. Okay, that's going to be first and foremost. Making sure that they don't take an injury trying to move a heavy patient, trying to do something like when they're trying to do something fast because things get hectic in the ER, right? We also need to make sure we're working on physical and mental fatigue accumulation. So making sure that we're being able to kind of practice like we play and ensuring that like a long day doesn't cause them to make mistakes mentally or physically because they're just running on empty. So a couple of things that I would focus on when we're training is number one, everything we do standing or like a plank position. We don't do anything seated because that's not how the job is, right? So no seated lat pull downs, no seated calf raises, none of that. We're getting on the Stairmaster and we're grinding out hard sets of cardio because we want to take our bodies to that like level 8, level 9, level 10 outside of our work. So that way we can maintain that 7 easily, you know, and then we can manage those spikes. So again, taking ourselves to our limits when we're rested and our ability to recover. So that way we can play a little bit harder in our jobs in the moment.
Sure. So no
I'd also do it.
No stationary bike for those gals and guys.
And obviously that's better than nothing, right? So if you have a
Right.
Peloton, you don't need to go sell it right now. And especially if you love biking, great. But I want to make sure that you're practicing being on your feet when you are training as well. So we just kind of make sure that that's a big piece of the training puzzle. We'd also be hammering core, okay? And when people think core, we think planks, we think sit-ups, right? We think abs, okay? But the rectus abdominis, that's the pretentious way of saying six-pack, Ken.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just one piece of our core. Core also includes our internal, external obliques. It includes our like the muscles that go along our spine, and it includes our transverse abdominis, which is it's like a girdle muscle that wraps all the way around our waist and holds everything tight. And in fact, the transverse might be one of the most important pieces of the core because it's the thing that stabilizes your spine when you're lifting, moving, loading, twisting, bending, doing all the things that ER nurses are doing on a daily basis. So we'd be hammering that from all different angles. So a lot of planks, and when planks are too easy, we add weight to them. Side planks for sure. That's a clutch exercise that some of the world's foremost leading spinal researcher, Dr. Stuart McGill, recommends as one of his top 3 exercises, side planks, as well as doing different exercises like weightlifting exercises that are going to prioritize your core. So rather than maybe doing like a heavy deadlift like our firefighters are doing,
right?
Which by the way, nurses should still do deadlifts for sure, but maybe focusing on a single leg deadlift, getting that balance, getting that cross body coordination, and just being able to translate power from the feet all the way to the upper body. Making sure that there are no weak links, especially from the rib cage to the hips. It's just so important for these ER nurses.
Yeah, very interesting. So any ER professionals that have a Peloton that after listening to Nate do want to sell it, I'll buy it. I'll take it off your hands for like $10. I'll even come over and I'll pick it up. How's that?
You're so generous.
Yeah, that's how I roll.
What a gentleman.
I try. Thanks for calling me out on that one. So in terms of the diet, anything different from what you already mentioned that you'd suggest for an ER or hospital professional?
Yeah, first and foremost is have something available that you can just have on hand. So like pre-made protein shakes are so important for ER nurses because a lot of times it's like catered food will come into the office or come into the like into the ER or into the hospital.
Sure.
And it's just so easy to just grab that on the way. But most of the time, those aren't like the healthiest options that are going to give you optimal clarity of mind, optimal abilities in your body. So having like an easy to drink protein shakes or like something you can grab real quick, like little cut up carrots are an awesome way to make sure you stay fueled up for a long shift. So that's really, really important. Outside of that, it really depending on the goals of the person in question. I like when I was working a little bit more heavily with nurses, and my mom's a labor and delivery nurse, is I like to have a single day per week that's a fasted day. So it gives a little bit more flexibility in the moment when you are grabbing something off the catering table because you don't have time and you didn't prep because you worked 12 hours yesterday. So I think of them as like a nutritional insurance policy. So like, let's say on like a single day of the week. And then some people prefer to do this. Some nurses prefer to do this on a work day. Some of them prefer to do it on an off day. It really depends on how your body reacts to not eating for 24 hours. Do you get like completely brain dead and like low blood sugar, or do you feel more on? So that's definitely a personal thing. But I like to, let's say, Ken, we're going to do a 24-hour fast tomorrow. So I would eat dinner early tonight. It's like 6 p.m. And then I would not eat until dinner tomorrow, 7 p.m. So I'd get 24 hours, but I would not spend an entire day without eating because I think that can be a little bit hard on the brain.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
So it gives more flexibility, but also enables you to negate some of the mediocre or poor choices that get made in a hurry.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna be forced to basically do the 24-hour thing tomorrow because I have a colonoscopy on Friday. So I'm gonna find out what it does to my brain after I eat breakfast tomorrow and don't eat for 24 hours. So that'll be interesting. I've never done that before.
It's not bad. What you need to do is stay busy. Drink a ton of water. I don't know if you can have tea or not, but like just having water and tea handy at all times is perfect. And as long as you've got a stacked schedule, You might notice it, but here's another thing about being hungry, Ken, is that like when we're hungry from an evolutionary perspective, like we didn't have refrigerators back in like the paleo era, right? So when we got hungry, we'd go hunt, right?
Yeah.
So it triggers this kind of fight or flight. So I talked about the parasympathetic nervous system, that's your rest and digest. That's slow down. That's what we want kind of after dinner.
Right.
That's why we eat Chipotle burritos at dinner. And then we talk about sympathetic nervous system. That's our fight or flight, but it kind of gets a bad rep because, you know, like this over here is extreme, but kind of being over here, it makes you a little bit more mentally on. It gives you a little bit more perception. It makes you able to move faster, think more clearly until you get to that kind of like hangry zone. So you can actually harness some of those feelings of hunger and put them towards your work and actually use them as a way to amplify what you're currently doing. Just reframe that sensation in your mind as energy rather than hunger.
Interesting. So my plan of doing nothing but watching Netflix and drinking water tomorrow is not a good idea.
No, you'll be very hungry by like 10 a.m.
Got it. All right. So, you talked about fight or flight, and that's a good segue to the last point. Or last profession I want to cover, definitely last, but definitely not least, is the police officer, because their job on a particular day could be like 180 degrees different. They could have a day where they're in the car most of the day and there really isn't a lot of activity. And then they could have a high stress day where all of a sudden they got to chase somebody's fighting them all of a sudden in a surprise. They got a domestic dispute. Or unfortunately in these days, they got to deal with the riot and they got to put the gear on. And now not only are they standing, but they're in high alert because they don't know what's going to happen, what's going to be thrown at them. So for a profession like a police officer, where frankly, you really don't know what your day is going to bring, how do you train and how do you plan your diet for that?
Great question. And police officers wear a ton of hats, so it's important to train in a variety of ways. So we had already mentioned for firefighters, talking about kind of those longer training days to match the grind that they can deal with, but also the heavy lifting to develop that raw strength. I think both of those are important for police officers, with the long grind being more replaced for some running, because like you said, you don't know when you're going to have to actually like be boots on the ground, running after something, chasing something, running away, doesn't like whatever that ends up looking like. So you got to have some sort of cardiovascular health, especially with running. So practice like you play. Again, the Peloton, sitting on a recumbent bike, it's just not doing you any favors. It doesn't translate to a run. The other thing is, yes, I would love to have like a kind of a 5K run in my program for police officers, but also we need to get those guys doing some hill sprints. Just A, increasing your cardiovascular capacity, B, taking yourself to that red line over and over and over again and teaching your body how to respond to it. And then C, just making sure that you can run those short sprints, those short bursts as needed. Okay. Yeah. So that's like from a cardio perspective, we need like 5Ks on a regular basis, and we need hill sprints on a weekly basis as well. In the gym, we're talking about, for most police officers, it doesn't need to be a crazy radical program. Any sort of body part split is fine. I think that just like a regular workout program that's like an upper, lower, like a push pull and a lower body day, 3-day a week is plenty. Hitting kind of several different rep ranges. You want to hit like a 5 rep range for strength, an 8 to 12 rep range for a little bit more muscle building, and then a 15 to 20 rep range for muscular endurance. So you have the kind of the gamut, right? A lot of hats. We want a lot of different qualities trained. And then I have 2 other suggestions that I think are really important. Please. One is a hand-to-hand combat skill, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think that can be like very, very important. Developing grip strength, developing kind of understanding how your body moves through space, and being able to actually, restrain someone. And then the 4th one is some sort of meditation practice, because we're doing all these things in this, going into that sympathetic nervous system state between our sprints and our runs and our workouts and our Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But also, like, when do we take it down a notch and teach our body to recover and balance that out? Because like a police officer's job is not easy, and not one that I would feel comfortable doing. There's so many things and so many variables, and you don't know how people are going to react. So you always have to be the calmest person in the room. Yeah. And if everything that you're doing is pushing you towards the sympathetic fight or flight, even if you're a generally calm person, everyone has a limit, right?
Sure.
So developing those habits and practices that allow you to always have the most level head is just so important for your safety. So
yeah,
I think those four.
Yeah, that is a good question to kind of close the loop on this. Is you talked about stress in all those professions, even some of our public safety professionals we really didn't mention, whether they be corrections officers or EMTs and so forth. All of these professions, I truly believe in 2020, are under more stress than they've ever been, whether it's COVID-19, unrest, forest fires, hurricanes, those we're in hurricane season right now. I was just watching
I just thought we were in
Houston
Jumanji
underwater.
season.
Yeah, man, it's like, it's something out of the Bible, end of the world type stuff. I don't know. But, all of these folks, all of these, as I call them, heroes, are under possibly the most stress that they've ever had in their career. Yeah, is there maybe, one number one tip, whether it's from an exercise routine, a diet, meditation, something? Is there possibly a number one tip to kind of mentally center yourself if you're in one of those professions?
Yeah, and I think that, like, number one, it goes back to your training, right? We want to make sure that we've already practiced these things.
Yeah.
So meditation practice is great and is integral. And I brought it up for law enforcement officers, but I also think it can be so helpful for ER nurses to de-stress from hard days, right? My cousin is she works with children with cancer in Seattle. And like, it's just a hard job that she brings home all the time. So having some sort of meditation practice for her, really important. Firefighters, for sure. You spend 20 hours in a fight or flight response state, your body is not right. You need to bring it back. We need to bring it back to balance. So that's really important. But when you're in the moment, when you're in the middle of something, you get a quick respite between like going from one fire to another, between patients, between like calls, whatever that looks like. Man, the best thing you can do is just take like 10 deep breaths, put your hands on your stomach and try to make sure you fill that out. And it sounds maybe a little bit woo-woo, or like the meditation might sound a little bit like, oh, well, just kind of some hippy-dippy, whatever. But this stuff is actually scientifically proven to work and to help ground yourself, help you think a little bit more clearly, and give you a little bit more oxygen so that you're not thinking based on stress responses, but you're thinking based on your own mental capacity and cognition. So a few deep breaths, it's so simple, it's free, right? And it works. It will bring you a little bit closer to that, like that center, that what you're normally used to operating at.
Yeah. Very simple, but very valuable. Something you could do in a car or in a fire engine at a quick break in your locker room at a hospital. That I think that's an awesome tip. And
let's exhaust the free stuff first, right? Before we go into like weird supplements, right?
Yeah, you don't need to go to GNC and buy all the best equipment. Sometimes all you need to do is breathe and use some body resistance.
Right. You don't need to brew a whole pot of chamomile tea and light me incense.
You don't have
just take a few breaths.
Yeah, you don't have to buy 5 pounds of soy, all that other stuff. Really, really great insight. I always learn a lot when I have the pleasure of speaking with you, Nate. Last question I have for you, for our public safety professionals out there in the audience that could really use your brilliance and expertise. How can they tap into it? How can they find you out there?
Thanks for asking, Ken. So right now, I think the best place to find me and interact with me is in my Facebook group called the $1 Million Body Group. It's for groups of people who are just high performers looking to amplify their focus, their fitness, and their finances through the power of exercise and nutrition. And you can get there by going to N like Nate, then the number 8, trainingsystems.com/group. N8trainingsystems.com/group will get you there. And we have a ton of different resources in the group. So if you're looking for a home body weight program because your gym is closed, if you're looking for some nutritional guidance, so because you're having a hard time losing weight, like I have all that stuff in there, and I'm just happy to hook it up to any of our first responders, any of the people on the front line medically right now. So I'd be more than happy to set anyone up with whatever they need to move forward.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for offering that. Yeah, especially for all you public safety professionals out there. I'm assuming that if you want to get on the Facebook group and learn some things at 3 a.m, you probably can do that with Nate's Facebook group. Thank you so much for mentioning that, and just as important, thanks for spending some time with us today, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot. This was a lot of fun to talk to you, Ken.
Always fun to talk to you. It's been my pleasure to have you on. And thank you to all of you that have either watched or listened to this latest episode of Public Safety Talk Radio. And we will be back with you next week with another great episode. Take care. Public Safety Talk Radio is produced by the POCUA. POCUA is a consortium of financial institutions serving law enforcement as well as other first responders and public safety professionals. To learn more about our association and to find one of our credit unions or service providers near you, go to www.policecreditunions.com. And always remember, if you aren't working with one of our POCUA credit unions, you're just banking with an institution that just so happens to serve first responders. As a public safety professional, you and your family deserve better. Find a POCUA credit union today.